Do you know the story of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? He was such a special reindeer, different than the other ones. And he was embarrassed of being different, tried to hide it until he started to realize that maybe being different actually was his superpower. This is a book, a Christmas book, but it's a book with a story that even if you don't celebrate Christmas, it's a story that really has an important and beautiful message. And I'd like to share it with you tonight. It's me, Shonna, and you're here with stories with me. And if you've listened to other stories by me, you know the first thing we always do is just check in with our bodies and make sure that we're comfortable and relaxed and set things up so that you can just enjoy. So do what you need to do. If you need to get a drink, go get one. If you want to watch this story with somebody else, go tell them that you're ready. Do whatever you need to do, and I'll wait for you until it's time that you're ready to hear the words. Are you ready now? All right, let's get started. It says, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And it says, 'Twas the day before Christmas, and all through the hills the reindeer were playing, enjoying their spills, while every so often they'd stop and call names at one little deer not allowed in their games. Ha ha, look at Rudolph, his nose is a sight. It's red as a beet, twice as big, twice as bright. Well, Rudolph just cried. What else could he do? He knew that the things that they were saying were true. Where most reindeers' noses are brownish and tiny, poor Rudolph's was red, very large, and quite shiny. In daylight it sparkled. This picture shows that. And at night time it glowed like the eyes of a cat. Wow. Those other reindeer are teasing him because his nose is red and the rest of their noses are brown. And Rudolph feels ashamed about that. Oh, that's a bad feeling, isn't it? And although he was lonesome, he always was good, obeying his parents as good reindeer should. Obeying means listening to the rules. Okay. And that's why on this day Rudolph almost felt playful. He hoped that from Santa, soon driving his sleighful of presents and candy and dollies and toys for good little animals, good girls and boys, he'd get just as much, and this is what pleased him, as the happier, handsomer reindeer who teased him. So as night and a fog hid the world like a hood, he went to bed hopeful. He knew he'd been good. So how was Rudolph feeling? He was excited, I think so. He knew he'd been a very good little reindeer. And even though his nose was red and he thought it wasn't as nice as everybody else's, he knew he'd been listening to his parents, and he was excited for Santa to come. Well, way up north on this same foggy night, old Santa was packing his sleigh for its flight. "Ho, ho, this fog," he called out, "will be hard to get through." He shook his round head, and his tummy shook too. "Without any stars or a moon as our compass, this extra dark night is quite likely to swamp us." I think what he's trying to say is it's so foggy, it'll be hard for them to see. To keep from a smash-up, we'll have to fly slow. To see where we're going, we'll have to fly low. We'll steer by the street lamps and houses tonight in order to finish before it gets light. Just think how the boys' and girls' hopes would be shaken if we didn't reach them before they awaken. Poor Santa's a little bit worried about this fog. He's thinking, am I going to be able to fly in all of this fog? I don't want to disappoint the boys and girls. So he called out to his reindeer. Come, Dasher, come, Dancer, come, Prancer and Vixen. Come, Comet, come, Cupid, come, Donder and Blitzen. Be quick with your suppers. Get hitched in a hurry. You too will find fog, a delay, and a worry. That's all of the reindeer's names. Dancer and Prancer and Vixen. And he says, hurry up. This is very foggy. It's going to take extra time tonight. And Santa was right, as he usually is. The fog was as thick as soda's white fizz. He tangled in treetops again and again and barely missed hitting a huge speeding plane. Just not getting lost needed all Santa's skill, with street signs and numbers more difficult still. He still made good speed, with much twisting and turning, as long as the street lamps and house lights were burning. And at each house, first checking what people might live there, he'd quickly pick out the right presents to give there. Oh, look at those reindeer were getting tangled up in the treetops because it was so foggy and hard to see. Oh, there's the airplane. Oh, goodness. That is a bit dangerous, isn't it, with all that fog? But lights will be out after midnight, he said, for even most parents have then gone to bed. Because it might wake them, a match was denied him. Oh my, how he wished for just one star to guide him. Through dark streets and houses, old Santa did poorly. He now picked the presents more slowly and less surely. He really was worried, for what would he do if folks started waking before he was through? So Santa's getting worried because he has to go so slowly to stay safe and make sure that he's got the right presents. He can barely see. It's so foggy. He's worried. The night was still foggy and not at all clear when Santa arrived at the home of the deer. Onto the roof with the clouds all around it, he searched for the chimney and finally found it. The room he came down was blacker than ink. He went for a chair, but it turned out to be a sink. Oh, it was so dark. Look at, he put his mitten in the sink full of water and made his mitten all wet. The first reindeer bedroom was so very black, he tripped on the rug and burst open his pack. So dark that he had to move close to the bed and peek very hard at the sleeping deer's head before he could choose the right kind of toy, a doll for a kid or a train for another boy. But all this took time, and it filled Santa with gloom. While feeling his way toward the next reindeer's room, the door he just opened when, to his surprise, a soft, glowing, red-colored light met his eyes. The lamp wasn't burning. The light came instead from something that lay at the head of the bed. And there lay, but wait now, what would you suppose? What do you think was making that little glow of a light in that room? Let's find out. The glowing, you've guessed it, it was Rudolph's red nose. So this room was easy. This one little light let Santa pick quickly the gifts that were right. Rudolph's little red nose glowed, and it made a light for Santa and made his job so much easier. What do you think's going to happen next? Do you know the story? Let's find out. How happy he was till he went out the door, and the rest of the house was as black as before, so black that it made every step a dark mystery. And then came the greatest idea in all of history. What do you think was Santa's idea? Do you know? Let's find out. He went back to Rudolph and started to shake him, of course, very gently in order to wake him. And Rudolph could hardly believe his own eyes. You can just imagine his joy and surprise at seeing who stood there a paw's length away and told of the darkness and fog and delay, and Santa's great worry that children might waken before his complete Christmas trip had been taken. And you, he told Rudolph, might yet save the day. Your bright shining nose, sun, can show us the way. I need you, young fellow, to help me tonight, to lead all of my deer on the rest of our flight. And Rudolph broke out into such a big grin, it almost connected his ears and his chin. Look at how happy Rudolph was. His smile was so big because Santa asked him to guide the sleigh. Fantastic! He was so proud of that red nose. He scribbled a note to his folks in a hurry. I've gone to help Santa, he wrote. Don't worry. And said Santa, meet me and my sleigh on the lawn. You'd stick in the chimney. And in a flash, he was gone. So Rudolph pranced out through the door very gay and took his proud place at the head of the sleigh. Wow. What do you think about that? Santa said, that red nose of yours is really helpful. You get to be the leader of all the reindeer on this night. Wow, look at that. The rest of the night, well, what would you guess? Old Santa's idea was a brilliant success. And brilliant was almost no word for the way that Rudolph directed the deer and the sleigh. In spite of the fog, they flew quickly and low, and they made such good use of that wonderful glow that shone out from Rudolph at each intersection that not even once did they lose their direction. So did Rudolph's red nose work? I think it did. Not even once did they get lost. all of the houses and streets with a sign on 'em. The sleigh flew real low so that Rudolph could shine on 'em, to tell who lived where and just what to give whom. They'd stop by each window and peek in the room. Old Santa always knew which children were good and minded their parents and ate as they should. And so Santa would pick out the gift that was right, with Rudolph close by, making just enough light. It went so fast that before it was day, the very last present was given away. The very last stocking was filled to the top, just as the sun was preparing to pop. They made it. They delivered all the presents in time. Wow, how do you think Rudolph felt? Let's find out. The sun woke the reindeer in Rudolph's hometown, and they found the short message that he'd written down, then gathered outside to await his return. And were they surprised and excited to learn that Rudolph, the ugliest deer of them all, Rudolph the red-nosed, bashful and small, the funny-faced fellow they always called names and practically never allowed in their games, was now to be envied by all far and near, for no greater honor can come to a deer than riding with Santa and guiding his sleigh, the number one job on the number one day. Rudolph had the number one job on the number one day. I don't like that they called him the ugliest deer. I don't think he was ugly because he had a red nose. I think he was beautiful with his red nose and very helpful too. I bet they feel embarrassed about calling him names and bullying him, huh? The sleigh and its reindeer soon came into view, and Rudolph still led them as downward they flew. There he is, right there at the front. Oh my, was he proud as they came to a landing right where his handsomer playmates were standing. I'm going to say it again. I don't think that they were handsomer than him. I think he was beautiful. Those same deer that used to do nothing but tease him would now have done anything only to please him. They felt even sorrier that they had been bad when Santa said, "Rudolph, I never have had a deer quite so brave or brilliant as you at fighting black fog and steering me through. By you, last night's journey was actually bossed. Without you, I'm certain we'd all have been lost. I hope you'll continue to keep us from grief on future dark trips as my commander-in-chief." Wow, that's a very important job. While Rudolph just blushed from his head to his toes till all of his fur was as red as his nose. I think when you blush, it means you feel a little bit embarrassed. The crowd, there he is. The crowd clapped their paws and then started to screech, "Hip, hip, hooray for Rudolph! We want a speech!" But Rudolph, still bashful despite being a hero, was tired. His sleep on the trip totaled 0. So that's why his speech was quite short and not bright. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. And that's why, whenever it's foggy and gray, it's Rudolph the Red-Nosed who guides Santa's sleigh. Be listening this Christmas, but don't make a peep, 'cause that late at night children should be asleep. The very first sound that you'll hear on the roof, that is, if there's fog, will be Rudolph's small hoof. And soon after that, if you're still as a mouse, you might hear a swish as he flies round the house and shines enough light to give Santa a view of you and your room. And when they're all through, you may hear them call as they drive out of sight, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night." I love that story. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas to you, and thank you for joining me for this story. I'm so happy that this reindeer who was so badly treated was finally seen to be the wonderful reindeer he was, and he was beautiful, and that red nose, it saved the day. Have a great night. Thank you for staying with story with me. Bye-bye.